Namaste. I am Professor Vasant Shinde. I was Vice Chancellor and Professor of Archaeology in Deccan College, Deemed University in Pune. Now, before I discuss, in fact, about the research, rather the breakthrough research that we did at the site of Rakhigarhi, I would like to mention that India was a Vishwa Guru at one time, and in between, in fact, we lost the the way somewhere. But now, India is in a position to retain that particular status again, because in this Corona pandemic, the whole world has realized the value and the importance, the relevance of the Indian culture. The roots of most of these values that we follow today, they go back to the Harappan times. The Namaste tradition, in fact, of this the tradition that we follow. In fact, we have the actual evidence from the excavations at the Harappan site of Kalibanga in Rajasthan. Then, of course, there are many sciences, basic sciences and technologies which are developed by the Harappans, like the food habits of the Harappans, and that is so relevant even today, and the whole world has realized about that. Even the sciences like Ayurveda, naturopathy, yoga science. These are the important sciences which the genesis of which go back to the Harappan times. So I'm really happy that this whole world has realized this, and I'm sure that in future this is going to be the way of life in the entire world. So India, I'm proud that India is regaining its position as the Vishwa Guru. Now today I'm going to discuss about the implication of the DNA research that we did at the site of Rakhigarhi. In fact, this is considered to be one of the most important breakthrough research in the world. In fact, there was a big international conference on genome in China, sometimes in November, and there it was declared that the Rakhigarhi DNA is one of the 9 breakthrough researches carried out in 2019. So I'm happy that the whole world has taken note of this, and they have realized the importance of this particular work. So I'm going to discuss about that and the implications on Indian history, because when it comes to the Indian history, early Indian history particularly, there are a lot of misunderstanding, lot of misinterpretation, and some maybe interpretation is wrong. And now we have very strong evidence, which can be used in reconstructing the authentic history of the early period. I'm more interested in fact in the Harappan period because I always believe that the Harappans are the pioneers. They have set the foundation of the modern South Asia, and most of the traditions, cultural aspect, the values that the Harappans introduced, they are still being followed and they are relevant even today. How the Harappan culture has come into existence? There were a number of different opinions given given by different scholars. Some scholars thought that the people came from outside, maybe from West, maybe from Iran, maybe from Central Asia, and these are the people who are responsible for introducing some of the important developments in Indian subcontinent or in South Asia. Many scholars thought that the beginning of agriculture was done by the people coming from the West, particularly from maybe Levant region, through maybe Iran and Afghanistan. And then some people also thought that the Harappan civilization could not have been developed by the indigenous people. So naturally, some scholars thought that the Harappan civilization was built, developed by the people coming from Mesopotamia or from the west. Now, though many Indian scholars believe, because we have very strong archaeological evidence, that most of the developments are indigenous, very few attempts were made, in fact, to provide or generate authentic data in this particular respect. And very few efforts were made, in fact, to interpret this data properly. And now, we have three important sets of evidence. Now, nobody can deny this, the physical evidence that we have, the scientific evidence, most scientific evidence that we have. And on the basis of this, now we are making efforts to correct the history, to correct the misgivings given by the earlier scholars. We are not making efforts to rewrite the Indian history, of course. We are trying to authenticate the early Indian history, and some of the misgivings, misinterpretations done earlier, that needs to be corrected, and that is the effort, in fact, we want to do. Now, when these results were published, the DNA data was published, there are a lot of criticisms, particularly from those ones who have no background about the subject, or those who are more maybe amateur, and they consider themselves as maybe scholars. But from the scholarly world, in fact, within India and outside India, this particular research was highly welcome. And everybody has realized that this type of research needs to be introduced in the Indian subcontinent if you really want to, write the proper history of this region. So that effort was made by our team. So some of the, maybe I'll just mention two or three comments, because all of you should know, in fact, what comments were given by different scholars, different maybe amateurs. One comment was that this is highly politically oriented research. Now this is really bullshit, because this particular research was initiated in 2006. In fact, I began working in the Saraswati region. I excavated sites like Girawat, Farmana, Bitakar that time. And one of our aims of this particular research was to understand about the people who are responsible for the development of agriculture in South Asia, and about the people who have developed perhaps one of the unique civilizations in ancient world. Definitely, it is much different from the contemporary Mesopotamian and the Egyptian civilizations. Maybe sometimes, some other time, I can talk about the difference between Harappan civilization and the contemporary Mesopotamian and the Egyptian civilizations later sometimes. And most of the, even a lot of scholars, including archaeologists, historians, they always thought that this civilization must have been developed by people coming from outside, particularly from the west. Suppose when I excavated the site of Farmana, which is close to the site of Rakhigarhi, maybe around 30 kilometers away from the site of Rakhigarhi. Suppose that time I had found DNA, because if you really want to understand about population, about the composition of the population, about the ancestry of the people, their relation with the contemporary population, and their relation with the modern population, if you really want to understand these aspects, then the only way is to get DNA from the ancient skeletal remains, and that DNA can throw light on these various aspects that I mentioned. So suppose, in Farmana, when we tried, in fact, extracting DNA, we failed there, of course, because of maybe our mistakes, our wrong approach, maybe. We failed miserably. But there, in fact, suppose I had succeeded in Farmana in 2007 or 8, and I had published this maybe research, the data, the results maybe in 2010 or 11, my results would have been the same. I would not have changed the result because this scientific data cannot be changed. So it is wrong to mention that. It is wrong to state that this is politically oriented research. Second comment is that the data is very small, and from this data, one cannot really make a lot of judgments, lot of maybe interpretations. I agree with that, of course. We know that we have realized the importance of this particular lacuna also. But let me tell you that we have a very, very small data, DNA data. For the first time, somebody has succeeded in getting DNA from 4,500-year-old skeletal remains. With great difficulty, with great efforts, we succeeded in getting that. We analyzed that, and I intentionally involved number of genetic scientists from all over the world, a very well-known scientist from USA, from Germany also, apart from the Indian scientists, because I wanted to make sure that that this research that we are doing is more acceptable to the entire world community. Suppose we had done this research in fact in India only and published the data, these same scholars would have raised the doubts about maybe the research methodology, about our approach, etc. So we did not want that to happen. And therefore, right from the beginning, in fact, the scholars from outside, they did help us in doing the cross-checking. The main work, research, the sampling was done in India, the analysis was done in India. These are the scholars, outside scholars who have helped us in cross-checking the data that we have generated. And after coming, into the agreement, this particular data was published in one of the two topmost journals in the world. In fact, there are maybe around 20,000 scientific journals, and Science and Shale, these are considered to be the topmost journal in the world today, and they will not publish anything which is not acceptable. But at the same time, let me tell you that we are at this stage, we are not making any claim about knowing the composition of the Harappan population. We know that the site of Rakhigarhi, which was the biggest Harappan city located in Haryana, in fact in Hisar district of Haryana, it is much bigger, almost double the size of the so-called biggest Harappan city of Mohenjo-daro in Pakistan. So we know that there were a lot of people living in this particular city, and there may have been different groups, not only one group. So we know that we have not really understood from one maybe small scale this data, the composition of the Harappan population even at Rakhigarhi. So no question about knowing the composition of population outside Rakhigarhi also from this small data. But what is important, the most important contribution of this particular research, therefore we call this as a breakthrough research, is that for the first time we have identified the Indian ancestry of the Indian people. When I say Indian people, that means I'm covering the whole of South Asia. We had no idea what was the ancestry of South Asian people. But with these two papers that we published, we have clearly, we have got the evidence indicating that around 13,000 years ago, the hunter gatherers, maybe the last stage of the hunting gathering group, now they split into two groups. One group, went to Iran, and one group came to South Asia. And the group, in fact, who came to South Asia, now they were developing their own ancestry independently in South Asia. There is no ancestry of the Iranian farmers in the genetic history of the early population of South Asia, nor any evidence of genetic history of the steppe region in fact in South Asia. So it was purely a distinct, you know, ancestry which was being developed. So we have got the evidence of that about that. Now we know what is the distinct South Asian ancestry. Secondly, from 13,000 years till the Harappan times, there is a continuity in fact in the ancestry. And from the Harappan times to the modern times, the same ancestry continues without any break. When we have maybe gene, the percentage of which is around maybe about around 60 or above 60. So we consider that as the ancestry of that particular population. And we have more than 60% ancestry of the Harappans in the modern population of South Asia. So when I say that South Asia now we have uh, tested the modern population of South Asia from Andaman to Kashmir and from Afghanistan to Bengal. And in all these people, we have more than 60% Harappan ancestry. So that means, all of us, no matter what religion we follow, no matter what caste we follow, what creed we follow, all of us, carry, or all of us have the Harappan ancestry. I know we also jokingly say that those who oppose or those who have not accepted these results, they also have the same ancestry as we have. So this is a very very important breakthrough information that we have got from this particular research. So this is the importance of that, and therefore there is a huge implication of this particular research on Indian history. Now one by one, when I say that we have three sets of evidence. First is the archaeological evidence. Now archaeological also we have scouted many sites both in India and Pakistan. And there are some very early sites in India also as well as in Pakistan also. There is a site called Mehergarh in Pakistan, which is located in Bolan Pass, through which most of the foreign influences came to the came to South Asia or the Indian subcontinent. Now at Mehergarh, the site was described by a French scholar, and they have identified seven or eight different stages of development at the site, cultural development at the site. So it starts with the beginning of agriculture, maybe what we call as the ceramic Neolithic phase, which is dated to around 7,000 BCE. That means it is 9,000 years old. So the agriculture in India, the beginning of agriculture in India, goes back to almost 9,000 years, and which is contemporary. This particular development is contemporary with the development happening any other part of the world, including Middle East. So it is not that that people from Middle East have come to Indian subcontinent and they have begun this particular activity. It is not like that. The local people, in fact, they have started experimenting, trial and error method. And in fact, we have the evidence of that. In fact, they are developing very crude but practical technologies in the early stage. We can see that that they are making a person developing this technology. For example, pottery. In the second phase, of course, at Mehergarh, maybe dated to around 8,500 years ago, we find evidence of pottery. Now, this pottery is very handmade, very crude, handmade. And it is not well, the surface is also very crude. It is not well fired. But then, as you go in the ascending order, around 6,000 BC pottery becomes slightly finer. They have introduced more varieties. Then 5,000 years pottery becomes much different, but much finer. So we can see the gradual introduction of technology or the gradual upgradation of technology in the manufacture of pottery. So that means that suppose the people had come from outside, suppose as some scholars say, then they would have brought with them the technology with them. They would not have wasted the time in experimenting here. Secondly, they also would have brought their own, you know, cultural elements also, which you don't see that. What we are seeing in fact here is that these cultural elements are being developed by the people in this part. So this activity continues up to the Harappan stage, and then the same development has transformed into Harappan culture. And here we are using in fact two terms. One is Harappan culture, the period of which is from roughly from 6000 BC, from 8000 to 1500 BC, maybe 3500 BC. Sorry, 3500 years ago. So that is the range of the Harappan culture. And there is one phase of the Harappan culture dated between 2600 BC to 2000 or 1900 BC, in which we can see the tremendous development and urbanization taking place. So that phase is called the Harappan civilization. So we have also very strong evidence, in fact, how the Harappan civilization has evolved from the early stage. The early Harappan, what we call, is considered to be the formative stage. And from this early Harappan, gradually the Harappan civilization has evolved. And we have very strong evidence in this respect. Now let me mention, in fact, now, of course, I mentioned about the site of Mehrgarh, where we can see the gradual development, from the beginning of agriculture, beginning of settled life, till the beginning of the Harappan culture. And now, in the Saraswati basin, we have excavated so many sites. There are at least half a dozen sites. The site, first site, which provided very early trace of the Harappan culture was the site of Vijnana, which was excavated by the Archaeological Survey of India. And when the dates of this particular site were published, which are going back to 6000, 6500 BC, the archaeologists were not ready to accept the dates. I can understand because there were a few dates, and only one site had produced the dates. There was a lot of criticism that maybe some maybe scholars from outside India, they commented that perhaps the Indian archaeologists are not good in excavation. They are not following properly the stratigraphical excavation here, etc. But that is not true. Perhaps the Indian archaeologists are perhaps some of the Indian archaeologists are best excavators in the world. But then we did not react to that. We only responded. What we did in fact, then we selected other sites. Then site of Kunal was excavated. Then I excavated three sites: Virana. I excavated the site of Girawat, Farmana, and Mitatal. And then of course lastly the site of Rakhigarhi. And at all the sites, now we have six sites now. We have all the sites have produced ample AMS dates, which are considered the most authentic dates. Ample dates to suggest that the beginning of the Harappan culture in this part goes back to 6000 BCE. That is almost 8000 years old. And then, fortunately, of course, when I excavated site of Farmana, I could find, the Farmana had early Harappan phase and the phase of the Harappan civilization at the same site, one above the other. So I excavated, quite extensively, in fact, in the early stage of the Harappan culture, because we were interested, in fact, to understand how the cultural process had happened, how the development, how the Harappans have progressed from maybe formative stage to the civilization stage, and how the transformation has taken place in their structures, in their ceramics, and other material equipment. And we found really very good evidence about the smooth transition. I say that it is a seamless transition from early Harappan to the Harappan civilization. So that transition is reflected, or that change is reflected in the structures, for example. See that the Harappans, in fact, at all these six sites that I mentioned, They started lifestyle very modestly. They started living or building very small, what we call as the circular pit dwellings. Now they're very small pit dwellings. Some also built circular huts also. So this is the modest beginning, and this is the evidence that we find in the earliest levels at the site. And then in the next stage, there also now we can see the gradual developments, various stages of development at these sites also. At Farmana we have that. At Girawat, in fact, we have that. At Virana, the excavator also noticed, and now we have studied that at the site of Rakigudi also. So Rakigudi is the final destination for us. So in the next stage, the people started building structures over the ground, not under the ground, not the pit dwellings. And then, of course, the size of these structures initially is very small. They started building rectangular or square structures. In the next stage, we find that the size of the structures become large. There's some kind of modicum of planning. Maybe structures are arranged in a linear pattern. And the next stage, in the fourth stage, we can see the proper development of the city or the town. And in the fifth stage, we can see the most advanced town planning of the Harappan people. So that gradual evolution is very much visible, very much evident in the structures which has been excavated. Now this is the most authentic data that we have generated. We call this as the primary data, and nobody can deny this particular data because we have the physical remains of this. So that is the kind of evidence we are getting. Same in case of pottery also, like in case of Mehergarh, the early Harappan pottery is crude, handmade, not well fired, not well made, not maybe well finished, not well fired. But then gradually, you know in the ascending order, we can see the change happening in fact, the change in the technology. And in the last stage, in fact, maybe in the fifth stage, the Harappans have introduced the fast wheel for making pottery, and we are following the same Harappan technology today. The potters who make the pottery today, they follow the same Harappan technology, the same kind of Harappan keels. Harappans develop special keels because they have fired this pottery perfectly. If you strike the Harappan pottery, it gives metallic sound. That means the pottery was perfectly fired. And for firing this pottery, they develop what we call as the closed keels. And the same keels continue even today. Same is the case with the stone beads. Now we can see the gradual development, evolution in part in the stone bead technology. And the technology which was perfected maybe around 2500 BC, the same technology continues on today. And there are some maybe craftsmen in the Khambat region who are following the same method, but they're following the Harappan technology and they're producing stone beads like the Harappans did. So this is the very strong evidence now. This is the evidence now that we have for the uh, cultural development. So clearly indicating that the indigenous people were gradually evolving, developing, and these are the people who have developed the settled life and the urban civilization in the Indian subcontinent. A very strong evidence. Now let me come to the genetic evidence. I say that now the evidence we tried to excavate at the site of Farmana, we failed there. Because initially we excavated all the burials. In fact, at Farmana we excavated nearly 70 burials. Farmana had a huge cemetery, and but what we did now, we excavated all the burials at one time. We kept them open for long because we wanted people to come and see, in order to remove their misunderstanding. And then maybe because in between there are a lot of maybe rain, sunshine, because of this the DNA escaped. And finally when we tried to extract DNA, we miserably failed there. But then, I came in contact with the Korean scientist. The Seoul National University Medical College has one of the finest, forensic science departments in the world. And some of the scientists there, in fact, they suggested me to change the methodology. They told that you should take proper precaution before excavating the burials. Excavate one burial at a time, document it properly, and immediately pack the samples and transport it to the laboratory. So we did that. In fact, we transported them to Deccan College laboratory. And even in fact in the laboratory also we took the same. We use the gowns and like today, in fact, because of the corona, people are using gowns and masks in the hospital. Exactly same kind of precaution was taken by us, even in the laboratory also. So we did that, cleaning of the samples in the laboratory, and then CCMB in Hyderabad finally could extract DNA from that. So because of change in the methodology, we succeeded in getting DNA from the Harappan skeletal remains. What we did, in fact, initially, the entire operation of the extraction of DNA, the analysis of DNA was done by the Indian scientists at the CCMB and some other laboratories. Particularly the uh, the authentication of the data was very important. So that was done, in fact, in some private laboratories, in fact, in the country. And then we make 3 sets of the samples. We did the analysis here, and we sent the samples to one sample to Harvard and one sample to Seoul National University for cross-checking. And they, after the results were available from all the 3 sources, from Indian, Harvard, and the Seoul National University, then only we publish our paper. So what is the result, in fact? Very interesting. Those who have read these 2 papers properly, carefully, and those who have understood these papers, I will tell what are maybe the results of this in brief. In fact, what are the results? The science paper, the results of the science paper is that genetically, steppe interrogation. Steppe means centration. Steppe interrogation in South Asia has not happened until 1000 BCE, not before 1000 BC. Furthermore, mixing with steppe was gradual and not sudden. Of course, we know that right from the early stage, right from the beginning of the settled life, people were in touch with different regions. There was a movement of the people happening right from the early stage. But that movement is different from the migration. It was not in large scale. The movement was there because of the trade activities. And that was happening all over the South Asia, all over Middle East Asia, and also with Central Asia also. But what is important, the steppe have arrived to India and mixed with the local populations and exchanged their genetic material. We find little bit of the genome of these people, in fact, mixed with their Harappan population later at some stage, but not the ancestry. The ancestry has not been replaced, not changed. The South Asian ancestry has remained intact. The knowledge and culture also has not been replaced. So therefore, we find a very distinct indigenous South Asian population and South Asian culture here. Then we also have observed that there was a great deal of variance due to differential mixing with diverse local populations. So the increase of steppe in Swat, in Pakistan particularly, is probably due to much concentration of this steppe at the region after 1000 BC. Till 1000 BC, we don't find lot of people coming from steppe region. We are also ruling out a large-scale spread of farmers. This is also important. From large-scale spread of farmers from Anatolia or the Anatolian roots into South Asia, the centerpiece of Anatolian hypothesis. Some scholars had made hypothesis that movement of people from the West, from maybe from Levant, from Middle East, and even from uh, Iran. Now the movement of the people from the West brought farming into region, and with it the Indo-European languages. Now, since no substantial movement of people occurred, this is checkmate for the Anatolian hypothesis. Clearly, this we are very clear about this. The genetic study clearly has brought a proper checkmate on this particular hypothesis. A second line evidence in favor of differential step mixing was observed as we have included 140 present day South Asian population group in this study, and only a handful of population is showing remarkable spike in ancestry from the state, not in the entire population. Maybe some people came and they stayed in fact in this part, but they have not altered the ancestry of the South Asian people. Now, this is the these are the broad conclusions that we drew from the that have been published in fact in science paper, and in the same paper we did not have the same data, this Rakigadi data in the science paper. Now in the Rakigadi data which is published in SAIL, now the broad conclusions that we have drawn is that the Rakigadi sample, we found out that in Rakigadi samples we found out that the Harappans were not carrying any genetic signatures from Iranian related ancestry. Very important, because all of lot of historians, archaeologists believe that the Iranian maybe Neolithic farmers, they came to Indian subcontinent and they developed agriculture. That is not true. This is extremely fascinating and indicative that agriculture in South Asia was invented and practiced by indigenous population. Because of this particular, even though the data is small, this is the conclusion that we can draw. Even if we have hundreds of maybe samples, we could have got the same results. Like when we check whether the rice is cooked or not, we check only one grain of rice, not the entire rice. Like that, this is the type of evidence that we have. Now this sets aside the previous belief that farming was brought by Neolithic Iranians. That is quite clear. Then the second conclusion that we drew is that it is also evident that significant movement of Harappans was towards the Central Asia. Very important, because a lot of scholars believe that the Aryans, in fact, they came from Central Asia, from the steppe region, and then they came to South Asia. They killed the people here. They pushed people to South India, and they established a new culture, new ancestry in South Asia. But we don't find that, in fact. The movement of the Harappans was found towards Central Asia. Now, this is on the basis of, so what we did, in fact, we have chosen two sites, one in Iran, Shari Sokta, and the other one is Gonur in Turkmenistan in Central Asia. Now, these two sites were contemporary to the Harappan civilization, and there was a strong connection between these sites and the Harappan civilization. So there we found some skeletal remains at these two sites. We did the DNA of these skeletal remains. And what fascinating thing which was revealed by this DNA research is that in the Harappan population, we do not have any genome of the Iranian people, Iranian farmers, nor the genome of the steppe farmers or the steppe people. But in the Iranian population, Iranian skeletal remains, and also in the Gonur of the steppe population region, we did find the ancestry of the Harappans in them. What does it indicate? That means first Harappan began to go outside, got mixed up with the local people, and then probably there was a reciprocal movement happening from both the regions. So this is a very, very important. Those who believe that the Aryans came outside, they should be reminded that that the Harappans were the first, in fact, who ventured to go out, and these are the people who you know, began this particular process. And therefore, this is very important because this has very strong implication on history, not only Indian history but the world history. Then our genetic results also indicate that Vedic knowledge was indigenous because we don't find any evidence of you know a horde of people coming from outside replacing the population and they are developing a new culture. That is not there. So people who wrote Vedas or the Vedic culture, in fact, what we refer to as now these the Vedas were written by the indigenous people. Vedic culture was established by the indigenous people. In fact, I go one step further. On the basis of this data, I now believe strongly that Harappans and the Vedic people, they were one and the same. Because I'll give you, maybe I will talk about that slowly. But this is a very, very important. So this is the kind of result that now we have found. Now from this now, and then the third set of evidence that we found, I would like to mention about that also. We did the facial reconstruction of some of the Harappan people from Rakhigali. Now this was also very, very, for the first time, of course, this type of research was done in the Indian subcontinent because we had no idea how Harappan people looked like. So with the Korean scientists, so we did, we generated, very scientific data. We got the MRI scan of some of the skeletal remains which are intact. Then also, we did, the detailed measurement of, each and every bone. And the Koreans have developed the program to feed the data in that. And it gradually, reconstruct the facial feature of the people. They have done that successfully, in fact, in Korea. So, in the first stage, you reconstruct the skull portion if it is damaged. Then, gradually, put on, we different maybe flesh and, ultimately the skin on the portion. And, when we have the 3D reconstruction of the Harappan population, they exactly look like the modern Haryana people there. So that means the appearance also has not changed for 5,000 years. This is very important. And also, we also see the, maybe uh, we see the continuity in the cultural aspect. Even today, when we move around in the Rakhigali village, we get the feel that we are moving back in the Harappan village. The exact same arrangement. The modern house is based on the Harappan plan. Even today, people are making the pottery, same pottery as the Harappan pottery. In fact, sometimes you get confused if you are one modern pot and one ancient pot is kept side by side. Perhaps you are not able to see which one is modern and which one is ancient. So that much similarity is there. So we can see that cultural continuity. Now we can see the continuity in the appearance of people also. So that also indicate that there is a continuity from the Harappan times to the modern times. So what is the implication impact of this? Now, before I speak about the last part of my discussion, about the implication, I have mentioned that I always believe that Harappans and the Rigvedic people were one and the same, and there is some basis for that. I have not come to the conclusion yet. This is my gut feeling, and that feeling is or the inference is based on some indications. There are very strong indications. And we know that now we need to generate more data in this particular respect. What is the indication? So we have done the synthesis of the textual data because in the Vedic text, there's a mention about the people, about the culture. And then we try to relate, in fact, we try to find out what is the corresponding archaeological evidence in that particular respect. There's a frequent mention about River Saraswati in the Vedic text. There are maybe 70 or 71 references in the Vedic text, particularly. And the Rigvedic text mentions that there were flourishing settlements, on the bank of river Saraswati, on the bank of river Dushaduti, and in the entire Saraswati basin. Now we have done very exhaustive, intensive, and extensive investigation in that particular region, which is identified as ancient Saraswati. The modern Gaggar and Hakra, which originates in fact in the Sivaliks, flows through Punjab, entire Haryana, into parts of Rajasthan. The part in India it's called Gaggar, and the moment it enters into Pakistan it's called Hakra. So in Pakistan, Bahawalpur district, it goes straight down and again reappears in India, in fact, in Kutch part of Gujarat, and then gets into the sea there. And we have seen, what is the archaeological sites, because if there's a mention, that means there was something existing there. So we actually analyze the settlement data from that particular region, particularly from Haryana and from Punjab. No, not from Punjab, Haryana and Rajasthan. And we have found a large number of only Harappan settlements. There are early Harappan settlements and settlements of the Harappan civilization in large number. When you look at the distribution of the Harappan settlements, overall, nearly 2/3 of the Harappan settlements are located in the Saraswati basin. We do not have either early settlements, there are very sporadic early settlements, or even late settlements are very sporadic, not sufficiently large as we find in fact in the case of the Harappans. So if the Rigvedic text has mentioned about the settlements, probably they have mentioned about the Harappan settlements. So that is one inference in fact we use. Secondly, now there is also mention about the different categories of the settlements. They talk about the cities, towns, farming villages, manufacturing units, even small, maybe what we call as the temporary settlements. Maybe established for exploiting the raw material, localized raw material, etc. So we do get this type of settlements. It's a mention about that. And we have the same kind of different categories of settlements, or we call them as different site hierarchies present in fact in the Harappan settlements. Rakhigarhi is the biggest Harappan city. Farmana was town. Kunal was a small village. So we have different kinds of, even Kuntasi, which we excavated in Gujarat, that is a manufacturing center or the industrial area. So this type of different categories of settlements is found only in the Harappan period, not in the later period. So this is also very important data. This can be related to the description given in the text. Then mention about the layout of the city. A very well meticulously laid out cities. Sometimes the cities are divided into 3 parts. Now, all the 5 cities that we have identified, they have provided a very strong evidence about a very well meticulously planned cities. No doubt about that. We have very good evidence about the sanitary system, the drainage system, perhaps one of the wonders that the Harappans created. We have very good evidence about the water management, water harvesting. And we do not have this type of evidence in fact in the later period also. So if the Rigvedic period, and we do not have cities of the later period divided into 3 parts. It is only the Harappan city of Dholavira which is divided into 3 parts. So we have this evidence in fact which can be connected to the textual evidence found in the Rigvedic text. Then the Rigvedic text mentions about different kinds, different sizes of fire altars. In fact, Professor B.B. Lal, when he excavated the site of Kalibanga, now we found number of these fire altars, very well-made fire altars. Some of them had in situ evidence of the charred bones and charred wood. And we know that they are different from the domestic hearths. So we have clear-cut evidence about the fire altars. Rakhigarhi has the same number of fire altars, different shapes, yoni shape, human shape fire altars, That is also mentioned in pattern. We have the same evidence in pattern this. We do not have this type of evidence, outside the Saraswati basin. So that is also very important. Then, there is also mention about the different kinds of burial system. Now we do have the evidence for the different kinds of burial system within the Harappan period also. In the early historic period, right now we do not have that kind of evidence. So that also can be correlated. They talk about the maritime activities. Harappans were great maritime explorers. They established maritime contacts with Mesopotamia, with Egypt. So if there's a mention about the maritime activities, probably they have mentioned about the maritime activities that the Harappans undertook. The only evidence that is not very strong, sufficiently strong, is the evidence of horse. But let me tell you that the site of Surkotada, which is close to the site of Dholavira in Kutch part of Gujarat. So the bones from that, the animal bones from this particular site were studied by two different groups of topmost archaeozoologists. The first study was carried out by Professor Bocconi from Hungary. He was considered to be the topmost archaeozoologist in the world that time. That is in the 80s and the 90s. And he came to a conclusion that the bones that he studied, they belong to the domesticated horse. Subsequently, the same bones were studied by Richard Meadow and his group in Harvard University. And the same group, the results of the same bones were different. Richard Meadow said that these are the bones not of domesticated horse, but bones of maybe wild donkey. Here, the experts are divided. But let me bring to your notice the evidence of the horse terracotta figure is one from Mohenjo-daro and one from the site of Lothal in Gujarat. Now there are proper indication of the horse animal in fact in the form of terracotta art. Nobody can deny the identification. That means the horse was there because Aryans, the Vedic people, and horse go hand in hand. But we need more data, of course, in this respect. The other criticism that we do not find sufficient evidence about the Vedic gods. But again, Vedic gods were worshipped in fact in the form of nature probably. But we have one evidence, fire worship, a very strong evidence of fire worship, which is very much mentioned in fact in the Vedic text. We have evidence of, for that. So considering all this evidence, I am of the firm belief that the Harappans and the Rigvedic people, they are one and the same. That means the Rigvedic culture was again also developed by the people from this region only, not the ones coming from outside. People came from outside, they got mixed up with the population, but they did it only for the trade purpose. They never made any efforts, in fact, in dislodging the local population. We do not have evidence for that. In fact, the Aryan theory was developed, in fact, on the basis of some skeletal remains. Maybe 200 years ago, this particular issue was raised, and we have been following this Aryan, debate for last almost 200 years. But nobody really, tried to make sincere efforts to generate scientific data to throw light on this particular issue. And a lot of scholars have preconceived notion that they believe that Aryans people came outside, and they don't want to believe the scientific data or the archaeological data. We can't help them. But now the time has come that most of the people have accepted the data that we have. Then when the site of Mohenjo-daro was being excavated in 30s and 40s. They found some skeletal remains, in fact, in the upper part, in fact, in the upper street of Mohenjo-daro. Elderly, scattered here and there. And Sir Mortimer Wheeler, in fact, who was considered to be the authority on the Harappan civilization, has published a couple of books also on the Harappan civilization. Mortimer Wheeler was of the opinion that these are the people who were killed by the invading Aryans. So indirectly and also directly, Wheeler said that the Harappans were Dravidian people. And these Dravidian people were killed by the invading Aryans. But later, if they're killed, in fact, there should have been some injury marks on their body. Later, all these skeletal remains were studied by a very well-known, very eminent physical anthropologist, Kenneth Kennedy from America. And he did not find any injury marks on the bones of the Harappan people at Mohenjo-daro. So he proposed, maybe he thought that these people may have died like in some epidemic, like today this corona is epidemic happening in fact in different parts of the world. Maybe some epidemic may have happened and a lot of people died. That was his one guess. The other guess is that perhaps these skeletal remains were found in the flood deposit. And we know archaeologically that the site of Mohenjo-daro, the city of Mohenjo-daro, was threatened by floods 3 times. 2 times when the Harappan economy was booming. So they could reconstruct that city immediately. But the last time the flood happened, in fact, around 2000 BC, when the decline of the civilization had started. And that may have created havoc, in fact, at the city of Mohenjo-daro, may have killed a lot of people. And these are the people who may have got buried in the flood deposit. So they must have died by suffocation. So these are the 2 hypotheses. But one thing is clear, that these people were not killed in any kind of battle or war. So no question of any attack, invasion on the Harappan city of Mohenjo-daro. So these are some of the evidences that I wanted to put forth. And finally, I would like to conclude my discussion. I'm really happy, if some people have questions, any suggestions in this respect. And I will also, chalk out my future plan, in fact, what we want to do. So the first conclusion, that for the last 13,000 years, there is no change in the ancestry of the people of South Asia. People have come from outside, they got mixed up, but they have not contributed to the change of the ancestry of South Asians. So unbroken ancestry for almost 13,000 years. That is the first conclusion we can draw. Then, of course, genetic and the continuity in the anatomic feature also, from Harappans to the modern time, the facial reconstruction that we have done, that shows that the Harappan people and the modern Haryana people, they look exactly the same, no change. Then most of the developments in South Asia, like developments of domestication, settled way of life, village life, city life, all were developed by the indigenous people. Of course, they may have got some ideas from outside, because they also were in touch with people from outside South Asia also. So that cannot be ignored. So there's a possibility that they also got some ideas, but cultural changes were happening constantly, in fact, in South Asia. So neither steppe ancestry from Central Asia nor ancient Iranian farmer ancestry in the South Asian population. So they have not contributed to the formation of South Asian ancestry at all. It is a distinct population. Then also, we can shed a new light on the Aryan invasion theory, about which I spoke, maybe briefly, and also about the Vedic people. We need to do more work, of course, on both. In fact, we need to generate more DNA data to understand the composition of the population, and also we need to generate more data, in fact, to understand the relation between the Harappans and the Vedic people. Then most of the South Asians are descendants of the Harappans. This is very important. We have no idea, in fact, now what is our ancestry. From Andaman to Kashmir and from Afghanistan to Bengal, we don't know much beyond Bengal. All the people, they share Harappan ancestry, and more than 60% Harappan ancestry. That means all of us, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai, all of us have the common ancestry. And therefore, I always advocate that the diversity that the Harappans use for their own development, India can learn in fact from the ancient cultures. We can use this diversity, unite this diversity for the development of the nation, for the construction of the nation. So this is a lesson in fact which we can get from the ancient cultures. Then other thing that my hypothesis, again we do not have solid evidence for that. Some people say that some scholars say that the Aryans came from outside and they brought Indo-European language here. And they believe that it may have happened around maybe 1500 BC, much later than the Harappans. But my hunch is that the Harappans were so advanced. They had contact with different parts of the world. We know that they had contact with Central Asia, they had contact with Persian Gulf region, with Gulf region, Mesopotamia, Egypt. Probably they also had contact with China. We are working on that aspect also. They were so advanced in fact in their knowledge system. They had developed the what we call as the the maritime system. They were the first boat builders in fact in the world. They taught the world in fact how to carry out international trade. So they were so advanced, and when they were dealing with different nations, they needed language and script. And I am of the opinion that since Sanskrit is an old language, and Sanskrit is considered the Janani, the mother of all Indo-European languages, even the mother of non-Indo-European languages also. In Dravidian language, there are a lot of Sanskrit words. So this forms as a foundation of Indo-European languages. So Harappans were so advanced, it is quite likely. I am not coming to the conclusion, but this is my inference. It is quite likely that the early form of Sanskrit was introduced by the Harappans. And then the language continued as many aspects, like their culture continued, cultural aspect continued, their appearance continued, the ancestry continued. The language which they introduced may also continue. And therefore, I believe that perhaps the Sanskrit, the genesis of Sanskrit goes back to the Harappan times. That is my hunch. We are going to work more on that. Implying Jain flow from South Asia into Shari Sukta and Gunur, a strong case to suggest out of India movement theory. Not into India, but out of India movement, which began, or rather introduced by the Indian people. And then they started work very peacefully in fact with the contemporary world outside. They spread their knowledge and they brought in a lot of new ideas. It is not that somebody came from outside and they taught us the basic knowledge, but these are the conclusions in fact which we can draw on the basis of these studies that we have done. Now the future plan that we have, particularly I will be working more in fact at the site of Rakhigarhi, because as some have criticized that we need more data. We agree for that also, of course. We need more data to talk about the population of Rakhigarhi, And we need to go beyond Rakhigarhi also, beyond Saraswati region also. Collect some data from Gujarat, from Rajasthan, from Punjab, even from Jammu, and try to understand what is the composition of the Harappan population. We need to have data from the cultures outside the Harappan domain, who were contemporary to the Harappans, who were interacting with the Harappans through, because of the trade. So we would like to know more about the relation between the Harappans and the contemporary population. And finally, we would like to we have put the flesh and skin on the Harappan people, but we would like to produce complete Harappan person with the color of the eyes, the color of the hair, the skin color, and how exactly Harappan look like in their dresses. So this is what we would like to do also. And finally, this is appeal to all of you, those who are listening to this talk, to this discussion. India had a very great ancient civilizations, ancient traditions, ancient knowledge system. We have contributed immensely to the history of the nation, also to the history of the world. And this great tradition needs to be properly preserved and protected. A lot of sites are being destroyed. A lot of monuments are being falling. And we know that only government cannot really take care of all the cultural treasure that we have in the country. We have it is strewn all over the country, in fact, and no government organization can really take care of the entire heritage of the country. So my appeal to all of you, those who have developed interest in this Indian culture, that they can, or all of us, who are working, doing research, all of us, should make sure that we take the participation of the local people, involve the local people, give the feeling that it is your culture which you like to protect and preserve for the posterity. We did that successfully at the site of Rakhigarhi, and today, in fact, Rakhigarhi, they have developed the heritage protection group. Something like that needs to be done, and it is the responsibility of all of us. So I thank the executive committee of Vijnana Bharati, my friend JNG, and others, in fact, who have thought about this particular program. Because of the pandemic, people are sitting, in fact, inside their homes. But through this, we can try to reach the rich knowledge system, in fact, that we have in the country. And everyone, in fact, everyone, no matter what background you have, everybody should know about the ancient culture and the contribution made by the ancient culture. So I thank all of you again, all those who are listening to me. And my appeal to all of you that, stay home, stay safe, and stay healthy, and follow the government norms, rules, and regulations. This is a matter of few days. We will come out very strongly, and we are confident that we will build a great nation again. Thank you very much. हॅलो पुढे ना एवढं चालेल चालेल हो याच्यातून बाहेर पडू का मी आता नंतर केव्हा तरी मला याच्यावरती इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टीम होती केव्हा तरी बोलेल एकदा